And as we get the move away from treasuries, I think that there's not another fiat currency that's going to replace it. And so my big picture is anything you're invested in right now, again, terrific, make profit while you can. But I think that we're going to see a serious decline of all assets that aren't tangible and trust-based. You know what I mean? Because everything's built on easy credit and it just can't go on forever. Yeah.
Think. Act. And prosper. You are now tuned into the Money Level Show.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. Today we're here at the World Symposium and I'm here with Taylor Kenney of ITM Trading. How's it going today?
It is good. Happy to be here. No complaints in Florida.
Yes, the humidity and everything, it gets to me, but
maybe one complaint then.
Yeah. But other than that, it's fine. It's good. So tell me a little bit about your story. You got into kind of broadcasting, journalism and such, and I know you got your start on TikTok. What was that like for you? What motivated you to kind of get into this field of work?
Yeah, it's funny because I actually didn't start in the financial space at all. I started in emergency preparedness, which a lot of people are often surprised to hear. But it's because I didn't have anyone in my real life who was interested in that at all. Once I started realizing how unprepared I was and everyone else in my life was, I was running around like with my head cut off trying to tell my friends and my family, you've got to get prepared, you've got to get this. No one wants to hear that. Yeah. No one wants to hear it. So the more that I felt, isolated and alone, and I thought, is anyone else out there doing the same things or thinking the same things? I just started making videos and throwing them into the void and was shocked to discover there were a lot of people who felt the same way, who just didn't have that maybe sense of community that sometimes you can find online. Yeah.
So was there a catalyst that kind of got you into the emergency preparedness? Because some folks are, I'd consider myself a light prepper.
Yeah.
I don't got a
prepper light.
I don't got a bunker or nothing like that, right? But
or at least you're not telling us.
Yeah, at least I'm not telling you.
It's okay.
You all not gonna know.
Secret's safe with me.
But sometimes there's usually a catalyst, whether someone's experienced some natural disaster or maybe they just watched a video and they were scared the shit out of them or whatever, right? What was kind of that for you?
So it's funny because I grew up in rural Southern Oregon and I've been evacuated for forest fires. We've lost power, snowed in, whatever you can imagine, right? All types of things. So we always had tons of emergency food, water, basic skills, things that you needed to know to survive. And I also lived about an hour outside of town, no cell phone service. So every time I left in my truck, I had this old beat up Chevy. I'd always pile it with a bunch of stuff in the back. So if I broke down, which had happened to me, I made sure I had supplies because there's no service out there. So you have to be able to fend for yourself. I moved to a city and lost all of it because you have accessibility. You don't need all those things anymore. It wasn't until I actually had a close friend of mine show me his bug out bag. And he's like, I think you'd really like this. You'd be into this. And he shows me his bag and I go, what's the point? He said, well, if you know what hits the fan, I grab my bag and I go and it's got everything I need. If I had to leave here in a minute. And he said, more important, people in cities should have one of these because if you need to go, you need seconds matter, right? When exiting, if there's a mass exodus somewhere. And it was like a light bulb moment. I realized I have lost all of my fundamental training. I've lost everything I grew up with. And people in cities need to be just as prepared. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if you could, if you have an answer to this, cool. If not, that's fine. If you could pinpoint one movie that you were like, this person should have been emergency prepared or that may have reinforced that belief of emergency preparedness is important. Do you have a movie in mind?
I don't have a movie in mind. No, nothing that any scary movie ever probably, but no, there's not. I think some people, there was that one on Netflix that came out 2 years ago where all the Teslas that one. I forget what it's called.
It's not called End of the World. It's I know. Julia Roberts.
Yes. That one. I had a bunch of people texting me when that came out, which always makes me laugh. Same with the one on HBO.
Leave the World Behind?
Yes, Leave the World Behind.
Yep.
HBO, there's one TV show that was based off of a video game. Do you know what I'm talking about? And it was like,
I think I know what you're talking
there's
about.
an episode where it's full bunker in there, actually, and same thing. I had a bunch of people start texting me. They go, "Oh my God, like, is this what you want?" I'm like, yeah, actually it is. That's my dream. That's my dream.
That's funny. Okay, so emergency preparedness, and oftentimes when people think about this, like they think about it, which is pretty logical, like, okay, the first thing you're gonna need is food, water, things of that nature.
Yeah.
But gold, precious metals plays a role in that too.
Absolutely.
And typically, the stereotype is that the preppers are like, we got to make sure we got the gold, and so there's a stereotype out there, right? Yeah. But was that something that you factored in, or did that come later on? Or?
Well, yeah, I mean, stereotypes sometimes exist for a reason, right? Yeah. I definitely feel like what the natural progression is if you think about, okay, everything is, for me, everyone prepares for different reasons. I picture societal collapse, not to go too dark on this, but what does that look like? What does that mean? You think about the first minute, hour, day, et cetera, is how I kind of view all my prepping. And for me, when you think about, okay, first things first is maybe I don't have access to ATMs. Maybe machines aren't working, cards aren't working. So then the first thing you think about is having cash on hand, right? But then you think, well, if we're in a crisis, what's going to happen to the cash? The government's going to print more and more and more of it, and it's going to get devalued, right? And in a situation where trust breaks down, no one's going to want your dollars, right? And actually in that movie, I think the one with Julia Roberts, there was a scene, or no, it was Civil War came out. I don't know if you saw that last year. Civil War, they try and pay with US dollars and they won't accept it because they're not worth anything as the country's, and that's the concern. So silver as kind of barterability and daily driver, and gold you think about is universal. It can't be devalued in the same way, right? And no matter where you are and who you're working with, it's a true store of value. So that's kind of the gateway, I think, from the prepper mindset into precious metals. And the key there for me was that devaluation of the currency. Because I started digging into it. And again, all my friends and family thought I was crazy at first.
They're like, yeah, she getting off into some conspiracy, y'all.
Like, we got to reel her back. But I started looking into it. I thought, this isn't conspiracy. This is fact. And the more I started trying to figure out what was going on with the dollar, the more nothing I could find in mainstream media or on it was like, it was almost hidden, but I started digging, the truth was there, and I thought, okay, this is wild. No one is talking about this. We're not taught it by intention, by design. And then I really couldn't stop digging into the financial side, and that's where I kind of shifted my focus. Not that I'm not still a prepper, but the content into the financial side. Yeah.
Now we're talking, you got me feeling like I'm crazy or something. So, okay, so then you got into the financial side of things, right? Which, for me, I like the saying, bears sound smart, bulls make money. Like, that's been the story of my investment journey in the last, 4 years, I would say. There's obviously facts of like, okay, this is a possibility, or this is the trajectory we're heading on. But then you got timing. And then you got, sometimes people make calls for certain things, which, these calls for like collapses and stuff, they've been going on for years. Not to say that they're not going to happen. Right. It's just the timing of when, unless you're like some Jim Jones type person that's just doing some crazy stuff, right? You all be careful of the cults that you follow, y'all. So when you got this time frame thing, and in the process of this timing, that the dollar's going to collapse. History says it. But you need to make money in the meantime. Sure. And the money's in like Nvidia, tech stocks, or Bitcoin, or whatever the case may be, gold, So how are you managing that? What are you thinking about? What's your mindset there?
Definitely. I think it's a good question. And I consider myself a realist. I'm very practical. So I always say to people, I'm not here to tell you not to make a profit, right? That's crazy. And I think that there's a saying, make hay while the sun is shining too. And that is what's happening right now. But I view gold and silver more like your insurance policy. Not to say that it obviously hasn't done well, right? I laugh too. People are, I don't know, they just have no idea. They come up to me and they go, oh, you're into gold? oh, that's so old fashioned. What, it just sits there, it doesn't do anything? And I'm like, gold's up, what, 28% this year? I'm like, my gold is just fine,
S&P,
Yeah, I'm like, that's probably better than most of what you got going on. But that being said, I own gold and silver because it's a way to protect my wealth, right? I think as far as everything else goes, it's interesting. I don't know if you caught Grant's speech the the Tuesday of this conference. Yeah, and he talked about cycles, and that's something that I study a lot too, because I do think that we're cyclical, and if you look at history, you can tell based on patterns where we're going and what's coming next. And there has been tremendous growth and profit right now, but talking about timing for me, how long is that going to go on for? And I know the collapse has been talked about forever. I get those comments all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, you're saying the same thing. A broken clock is right once, at least once a day. Believe me, I've heard it all.
Yeah.
But when I talk about currency collapse, I think there is a misconception. People think, okay, she's saying that tomorrow the dollar will be worth nothing. I never said that, right? I think that it's a fact, in my opinion, like if you look at the dollar, it's always going to be worth less than it was. It's happening slowly, but then it happens a little faster as all of these factors at play are impacting it, whether it's the BRICS alliance moving away from using the dollar, whether it's treasury yields going up, whether there's a million different things that are happening. Ultimately, I think we're going to see an acceleration of dollar decline. But it doesn't mean it's happening tomorrow. It could, but I don't think it is. I'm not necessarily coming out and saying that.
Yeah, I mean, it's below 100 right now, so we haven't seen that in a little while. But I do think that, just even looking at some of Ray Dalio's, research and others, and I had a conversation with Frank Giustra. He mentioned some of the same things, but about the, as the dollar declines, owning gold, owning stocks, owning, and things like that. I mean, Frank has a different perspective on the stocks piece, but it is ownership in a company. And so hard assets, and then obviously, the biggest concern for me is like bonds and things like that. So it's like, I'm not touching that stuff, right? Because we've been in this bond bull market for a while, and it's obviously a decline. That's like a cycle too, typically. And so what's kind of your view there in terms of like where people could, or where you're thinking, like as far as like, okay, this is how I can make money, but also like thinking of this larger picture, how do you kind of manage that? Because you got the short term and the long term. So how are you managing that?
Well, it's funny. If you're going to invest in something, and again, I view them very differently, like the wealth protection versus investing. Not that gold isn't an investment, but if you're going to invest in something, you want to know what you're investing in. I think there's like that smart advice, like don't invest in something you don't understand, right? And to be honest, what's funny with the bond market is I actually feel like I understand it pretty well, and that would make me never want to invest. There's a reason that we are seeing foreign nations move out of treasuries, right? I think, again, that is going to continue forward. And talking about cycles too, something that's a little bit different about the dollar versus other fiat currencies, of course, is that it's the global reserve currency. So as we see the dollar decline, and this is something I hear all the time too. Oh, Taylor, you're just spreading fear. You're fear-mongering because there will always be a buyer. There will always be a buyer of U.S. debt because it's the global reserve currency. Well, that has held true so far, but why? Because we are the global reserve currency. What happens when we're not? What happens when there are alternatives? And I think we're starting to see that and really grappling with that. And as we get the move away from treasuries, I think that there's not another fiat currency that's going to replace it. And so my big picture is anything you're invested in right now, again, terrific, make profit while you can. But I think that we're going to see a serious decline of all assets that aren't tangible and trust-based. You know what I mean? Because everything's built on easy credit and it just can't go on forever. Yeah.
House of cards, pretty much.
Totally.
Yeah, I got you on that. So thinking about what's happening now, obviously the pivot from the Doge and the cuts to now passing a bill that's going to be
Whiplash.
like $2 trillion to $4 trillion, different estimates on how much is going to increase the deficit. And then there's been like kind of like a divide between, the Republicans and stuff, and not to get political, but just thinking about, okay, now the sentiment has changed to focusing on growth.
Yeah.
And the bill is going to, definitely cause more money printing. That's what's going to increase the deficits. And typically when we're in that environment, assets typically go up.
Yeah.
And so what's kind of your view there? I mean, obviously it's not going to be to the same extent as COVID, maybe.
Maybe.
But what are you thinking there? Because now it's like, okay, now we're turning on the money pressures again. Because if you're draining the swamp, you're going to go through some pain.
Yeah.
And there's some, people losing jobs, whatever the case may be.
Of course.
Right? Recession, because the money has just been so easy, but now it's like that sentiment's changed to like, okay, lower rates and turn on the printers again. So what's kind of your take there?
My take on it is short-term gain, long-term pain. I think you're absolutely right. We're going to see everything go up. That's just the way it works, right? But again, what is the trade-off? The trade-off, again, is a continual devaluation of the dollar. And what keeps happening is we're seeing the disappearing of the middle class, right? The haves are getting more and the have-nots are getting less, and that divide is continuing to grow. I think we're going to see that turbocharge, right? There's a lot of opportunity right now to make a lot of profit. And to your point, I think that opportunity is there, but those who already have are the ones who are set up for success right now. I think that any time in society you have that growing divide happen, you're just setting yourself up for a lot more turmoil. We're already so divided. Things are so charged. It really concerns me from a societal standpoint, because what's going to happen too is as more people are in the have-not category, you're going to see the government also stepping in trying to support. Not that that's a bad or a wrong thing, but it makes me mad because it's all coming from them in the first place. They're the ones causing this problem. And what's going to happen is you're going to have even more spending. And how long can this really go on for? So to answer, I don't know if I answered your question, but yes, I do believe that there's going to be a lot of opportunity to make profit. But I think the ones who are going to be making the most are the ones who already have a lot to begin with. Yeah. Or everyone else is just going to get screwed.
And that speaks to like the continuous rise of populism and the threat of civil war, the threat of resistance and things of that nature. So it definitely could be doom and gloom, for sure. So,
what did I tell you when I met you? I said I make a lot of doom and gloom.
Yeah. So,
I know. I try not to live in it. I try to focus on the positive, but it is hard sometimes, when you're digging into all this stuff, the logical conclusions of what you're seeing can go there.
Yeah, for sure. So bringing it back, to like just getting back to that human element.
Yeah.
So what's something that you're optimistic about? Like there's a lot of things to be negative about, a lot of things to be pessimistic about, and we don't get a lot of positive news, right? Bad news sells for a reason. What are some things that you're optimistic about or that you're hopeful for?
Yeah, I think I'm optimistic about the biggest thing actually that excites me is a lot of more people waking up, not to use kind of like an overused term, but again, I mentioned earlier, like friends or family members who originally were kind of like, what are you talking about? Dollar collapse, Taylor's lost her mind, right? And it's not that it's because they're watching my videos that they've changed their mind. They're watching the world and they're seeing what's happening. And I think the more people who understand what's going on, the more possibility there is for real change, And I think like you can control what you can control. And that's why I'm always telling everyone, buy gold and silver, do this and that, and make sure you're protected and have your preps in place and blah, 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 because you can at least control that to the best of your ability if that's if that's something you can do. But I think the more widespread that we all kind of see what's happening, hopefully the more change we can enact in the future. So I don't know if you feel that way as well, if you see that there's kind of like a shift happening.
Yeah. I mean, there's people that in my life that never thought about buying gold. When my mom's buying Morgan Silvers and stuff like that. Like, dang, Mom, you bought a couple more Morgan Silvers? Okay.
She's a stacker now?
Yeah. So I've definitely seen that. And, I also think about like the community aspect of, finding a community of not like-minded people, but kind of like that at least know and understand like, okay, at the end of the day, I can get all of my, prepping in order or whatever. But at the end of the day, I may need somebody to have certain skills or
100%.
Things like that. So.
100%. I think community is honestly one of the biggest components. I also think sometimes it's the hardest for people. Yeah. That was probably like one of the number one questions I got when I was doing a lot of the preparedness content was, how do I find my community? There's a lot of people out there who are like-minded, but they feel very isolated, which is tough. I mean, and that's not even something just in that space. I think people feel that way across the world right now. There's a lot of that. But specifically with prepping, you know, I think some of us are lucky. Like, I feel very lucky when I came to ITM trading, everyone who works there have the same mindset. And right away, I got kind of enveloped in this group of people I see every day who think the same way, feel the same way, prep the same way. And so I immediately had this terrific community. But when I was living in a city prior to that, where I didn't feel like that sentiment was shared, it was tough. But I told people, if you seek it out, you'll find it. Farmers markets, I started volunteering at the fire department, a lot of like-minded people, took some local community classes around what to do in emergency situations, met people there. So I think it just takes sometimes putting yourself out there if it's not already built into your social circle.
Yeah, definitely. And what's the importance of like mental health, like during this time?
Yeah.
You know? So like, what are some things you do? Like me, I started implementing like meditation and you know, really try to support people on that front in terms of like we dealing with constant, like just negativity or crisis or, you know, headlines and it could just drive you crazy. Like, and you're just like, I don't even want to be a part of this world. Like, you know, and so like, there's no peace, no agreement, no, you know, we can't agree on how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, you know? And so like, what are kind of some things that you think about there or tips that you use to kind of navigate that?
It's an important question. I'm glad you asked it because I also know people who have had to shut it off, right? Delete X or take a break or do whatever it is because it can get to be too much. I think everyone has to answer that for themselves. Like I personally am able to switch it on and off. And when I'm researching or studying or looking at something, I almost can have this kind of like separate capacity for it. Not everyone has that, right? And if you can't and you're feeling yourself get sucked into it too much, there's nothing wrong with taking a break, right? You don't have to be so hooked into the second by second news cycle, right? It's not even 24 hours anymore. It's like a day's a long time, right? And then to your point, I think doing things outside of being so sucked into the news is really important. So for me, spending time with your loved ones, friends and family, people who aren't online, I think that's big. I love to craft. I love to cook. I recently started doing CrossFit again, which also sinks into my prepping. So, you know, you got this big old bug out bag and you can't even run a mile with it. What are you know, you're not going to get very far. That's
true. Yeah, which I'm actually changing my workouts up. I play a lot of basketball, but
nice.
the traditional lifts, and it's just like, I want to be able to, I was playing the video game of the Tomb Raider. And I'm just like, Laura Croft, she's freaking badass. She's jumping and hanging on stuff.
You were prepping, you were getting your moves ready, you were out there, you were doing all kinds of stuff.
But I was thinking about like, okay, I need to be a little more agile. Like, you know, can I jump? Can I, you know, move? Can I, you know, get in the crawl, small spaces, like, you know, things like that. And so that's kind of something that I've been factoring in, like, and thinking about with my workouts and stuff too.
Totally. Well, I don't know if you've ever done that. Have you ever done any kind of emergency drill for yourself?
No, I have not.
Okay, so it's something I recommend this to everyone who, even if you're prepper light or like interested in this, I recommend actually coming up with a scenario. And it doesn't have to be anything crazy or extreme again, but just like a basic, like, okay, you have to go, you have this much time, whatever it is, blah, blah. You will be shocked how long it takes you when you start thinking like, what do I actually need to grab? What do I, blah, blah, blah. Where is that thing? Where do I keep the, oh, do I even have my passport? You know, blah, blah, like all these little things you don't think about. Then you get in the car and your car's on empty or you're doing this or that. And it's like, until you kind of run through a scenario or two physically, I think you don't realize the gaps that you have. So I always recommend that if that is something that people are interested in.
Got it. Do you have a checklist or anything for the audience? Do you have like a...
I don't. I've been asked before that I should make some kind of like manual or book or whatnot. But
I bought a book. It's like a bug in guide.
Okay.
You know, where it's like if you I mean, you got the bug out, but then you also got like if you're
totally
plugged in, you know.
I always tell people too, make sure you print off everything you think you're going to need or have your books, because I had a friend who was in Texas. I don't know now, maybe it was 3 years ago. It was when they had like the big freeze. No one had water for like 2 weeks. And she told me, she said, all I could think about was you telling me that I needed to have a minimum of X amount of water, blah, blah. And she, of course, didn't have it. But she said, I was able to get water and then I went to boil it. And she said, we didn't have any internet access. And I realized I don't even know how long I need to boil water before it's safe to drink? And she said, I couldn't look it up. And I had no manual, I had no printout, I had no book. So there's a lot of, again, those little things to think about too.
That's true. So have you interviewed Doomberg?
No, I haven't. No.
So Doomberg is a big prepper. So y'all may have to connect sometime. So thank you for coming on and everything. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. Where can people find more, find you, follow you?
Yeah, absolutely. ITM Trading. So I have my show there, Tailor Made Economics, where I break down complex economic topics so we can all learn and grow together. And then you can follow me on X at Taylor Kenney ITM.
All right, y'all, you got it. I'll link to it in the description below. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.